When we hear the word leader, most of us imagine someone standing at the front, a person with a strong voice, commanding presence, someone who always seems to know what to do. In today's world, leadership is almost always tied to visibility. We expect leaders to be loud, confident, unshakable, and constantly in the spotlight. But more than 2,000 years ago, Lao Tzu, the sage of the Tao Te Ching, gave us a very different vision, one that feels radical even now. He wrote, "The best leader is the one whose existence is barely known. When his work is done, when his aim is fulfilled, the people will say, 'We did it ourselves.' This is not the kind of leadership we're used to. Not loud, not controlling, not demanding constant recognition, but quiet, humble, invisible. Imagine a village chief many centuries ago. The people of his village are in conflict over water rights. Two families argue endlessly about who owns the stream that flows past their fields. The entire community is drawn into the fight, divided and bitter. Finally, they turn to their chief. He could have shouted, imposed his will, chosen sides. That is what the villagers expected. Instead, he gathered everyone together, and he simply asked, "Tell me your story." He listened. He waited. He gave each side space to speak until the anger drained from their voices. Then, instead of making a decree, he asked the entire village, "What do you believe is fair?" At first, there was silence, then a voice, then another. Slowly, the villagers found their own solution, a shared schedule for water. When it was finished, the people said, "We solved it ourselves." But they hadn't. The chief had guided the process silently, invisibly. He hadn't forced a solution. He created the conditions for one to emerge. This is the essence of Lao Tzu's leadership. It's not about being the hero of the story. It's about stepping so far back that others step forward into their own power. Contrast that with many modern leaders. The boss who micromanages every detail, the politician who thrives on attention, the coach who believes fear is the only motivator. They may be effective in the short term, but when they leave, everything falls apart. Because they didn't build people, they built dependency. The invisible leader builds something stronger. They build confidence, they build trust, they build people who can carry on without them. Lao Tzu loved metaphors, and one of his favorites was water. Water is humble. It flows to the lowest places. It nourishes without asking for anything in return. It doesn't compete, it doesn't shout, it doesn't force, and yet nothing is stronger. Over centuries, water carves valleys, shapes mountains, and sustains entire civilizations. A leader, Lao Tzu said, should be like water, flexible, yielding, quiet, but unstoppable. Think of a river. It doesn't argue with gravity. It doesn't resist the rocks in its path. It simply flows around them. And in doing so, it keeps moving forward, slowly but surely, shaping the world itself. Now imagine two leaders. One fights constantly, barking orders, resisting everything. The other moves like water, adapting, nourishing, flowing where the energy is. Who do you think endures longer? History is full of water leaders, leaders who didn't chase glory but left deep, lasting impact. They didn't force themselves into the spotlight. They served quietly, consistently, like a river feeding its valley. Lao Tzu believed humility was the highest strength. In a world where leaders often demand praise, humility feels rare. The loud leader says, "Look at me." The humble leader says, "Look at what we built together." Consider two generals after a victory. The first stands proudly, taking full credit. His soldiers know they were pawns. The second thanks his soldiers, saying the victory belonged to them. They feel ownership, loyalty, and pride. Which army would you rather serve? Humility is powerful because it shifts focus away from ego and back onto the group. It builds loyalty not through fear, but through respect, and it ensures that when the leader leaves, the work continues. In business, this is called servant leadership. But Lao Tzu described it long before those words existed. A humble leader doesn't ask, "How can you serve me?" They ask, "How can I serve you?" Service is not weakness, it's wisdom. A good leader doesn't see themselves above others, but among them. They carry responsibility not to command, but to care. And people follow naturally when they know their leader truly serves them. Let's return to our village chief. When the drought came, the people demanded he fix it. He didn't make grand promises. Instead, he quietly organized. One group dug a canal. Another repaired the old well. Another carried water from the nearby spring. Within weeks, water returned to the village. The people celebrated, saying, "We saved ourselves." But it was the chief's invisible service that made it possible. A leader's greatness is measured not by how many follow orders, but by how many are empowered to act. Words are easy, actions are harder. The quiet leader knows that example is the most powerful form of leadership. If you want honesty, you must be honest. If you want loyalty, you must be loyal. If you want effort, you must give it yourself. Think of a parent. They can tell a child to be kind. But if the child sees cruelty in their actions, the words mean nothing. If the parent lives kindness, the lesson is learned without words. The same is true in workplaces, communities, nations. People follow what they see, not what they hear. This is why the invisible leader is so effective. They don't need to lecture. They embody, and people naturally follow. What happens when quiet leaders step away? The work continues. The people feel ownership. The vision lives on. What happens when loud leaders step away? The noise dies, and with it, the momentum, because nothing was built to last. Lao Tzu compared quiet leadership to bamboo. In storms, rigid trees snap, but bamboo bends, yields, and survives. It may seem fragile, but it endures. Quiet leaders endure. Their influence is subtle but deep. It doesn't fade when the spotlight moves away. You don't need to be a CEO or a president to practice Lao Tzu's leadership. We lead in small ways every day. A parent guiding a child gently instead of with control. A friend listening deeply instead of dominating the conversation. A colleague supporting instead of competing. Every act of humility, every act of service, every time you live by example, you are leading. Ask yourself, am I leading with ego or with humility? Am I demanding to be seen, or am I helping others shine? Am I clinging to control, or am I strong enough to trust? Lao Tzu's wisdom is timeless. The best leader is almost invisible. When the work is done, the people say, "We did it ourselves." Leadership is not about noise. It is not about fear. It is not about control. It is about humility. It is about service. It is about example. In a world obsessed with visibility, we can choose invisibility. In a world obsessed with control, we can choose trust. In a world obsessed with noise, we can choose silence. Because real leadership is not about being seen. It is about making sure others see themselves. And when that happens, when people rise in their own strength, when they say, "We did it ourselves," that is when you will know you have truly led.